Let me show you how I made this bowl. This bowl is made out of stoneware clay, around 1,000 grams. So I begin by wetting the potter's wheel and cleaning off all that dry dust. And then what I'm going to do is stick the potter's bat to the wheel itself. I've been trying to learn how to throw better on the bat because I find when I take the bowl off the potter's wheel at the end, it tends to warp and change shape. So I begin by laying down a piece of clay like I'm doing here and scoring in some ridges. This will increase the surface area and allow me to attach the bat and its stick more cohesively. Once I've found the centre of the bat, I'll begin to tap it to ensure it's in the middle of the wheel, and then applying some downward pressure to glue it all together. If you don't apply too much force or score the clay like I've just done, the bat tends to slip off. So just giving the bat a light clean with a sponge, and then I'll start to wedge my clay into a point. I do this because when I then slam the clay down onto the wheel like that, it creates a really nice seal and all the areas beneath the clay is consistent and it doesn't trap any air bubbles. Next, I'll just loosely run my hands over the ball and this just pulls it into a ball shape, and then I'll seal the edge down with my index finger. So I'm not trying to pull or cone or centre the clay at any stage. I'm just letting it run between my hands to make it a consistent shape all the way across. Once I've got it nice and roughly smoothed in, I'll then begin coning and centering the clay. This for me is still quite a new process, and sometimes I have to find that I cone the clay a couple of times before I can get it to the height that I'm looking for. I'm also finding that I'm making the clay very wet throughout this process, so I think in future videos I'm going to try and not use as much water. I have started scraping the water and the slip off the wheel and reusing that as part of this process. But I've been watching a lot of videos and I definitely think I'm using too much water. So as mentioned, just put a bit more water on and I begin pushing the clay back down into the bowl form. What I'm doing there is I'm actually leaning the cone slightly forwards before pressing down. Next, opening up the centre of the clay, and I'm practicing using my index fingers to open it up like so, rather than in the past I would have used my thumb, and this will help me scale to larger pieces in the future. For a piece this size I could definitely open it using my thumb, but when I'm throwing larger vases and things like that, it would make sense to use your fingers. I've noticed there's a slight wobble in the bowl, so I'm just correcting for that now by letting the bowl run between my fingers and creating that cone shape sloping upwards and inwards. This week I've really been focusing on having those long, confident pulls so that I'm handling the clay as infrequent as I can. As you can see here, that's a nice tall long pull, whereas in the past it probably would have taken me 3 attempts to get it there. I've also realised that when I'm centering the clay after I've opened it up, I'm squishing it back down, and I should leave a little lip underneath the clay tube so that it doesn't get stuck to the bat like it is here and I'm having to dig it in and get my fingers in there. What I've noticed is after I pulled there, the clay started to splay out a little bit, so I'm just collaring it back in by opening up my index finger and thumb far apart and then just kind of collaring it up. Next, I'm starting to create that bowl shape now. Whilst I'm trying to create long, confident pulls, I need to be careful that I don't overcommit at this stage, because if you pull the bowl out too quickly, then it can make it really unstable and it's likely to collapse later. So it took me, I think, about 3, maybe 4 attempts to get the bowl shape correct, and what I've actually learned as well is that I let it dry out a little bit, make it leather hard, and then just refine that bowl shape before trimming later, which you'll see in this video. I found the lip was a little bit uneven, so just removing some inconsistency there with a pin. and then pinching the rim of the bowl to make sure that it's nice and smooth. Splayed out a little bit, so just correcting for that there. Finally, removing the excess slip, and here's the bowl about 2 or 3 hours later. It started to dry out. It's a little bit leather hard, so I can remove it from the bat, and I'm just going to tidy up the inside of the bowl and get a really nice shape. I've got this wooden piece that's perfect slopes for a bowl. So what I've been trying is, once I've got the bowl centered, is just using that wooden piece to push into the bowl, and it deforms the leather hard clay slightly and makes it all roughly the same kind of shape as the wooden piece. So you can see here where the lines are starting to form, and over time I continue to press down and push the bowl out, and you'll find that the bowl shape now is a lot more consistent, and inside the bowl is much smoother. So after doing this, I'll pack up the bowl and let it dry out for about a day, day and a half, and then I'll come back to it later to do the final trimming. So it's a couple of days later and the bowl's a little bit harder than it was previously. And what I'm doing here is just tidying up the base. The inside of the bowl is relatively clean now because of the work I've done earlier. And I can now focus on the outside of the bowl and the foot. So removing some of that excess clay around the base, I then just start trimming away more and more clay until I've got a nice flat surface. It's important to have the flat surface before you start cutting in and carving the feet out, because this will ensure that the foot actually sits flat when the bowl is upright. So I'll just run this tool over the base of the bowl a couple of times until it's nice and flat. Next, I'm trimming up the edge of the bowl, and you can see here with how the clay is being removed inconsistently is that the walls aren't 100% even all the way across, despite the process I did earlier with that wooden piece. So once that's nice and smooth, I'll then burnish the edges with the wooden piece again here, and this creates a nice smooth texture. Sometimes I'll also run my fingers over the edge as well, because this will get a very similar effect. Once I'm happy with the bowl, I'll begin cutting in the foot, and I want it to look slightly recessed so that the edge of the bowl on the outside of the foot looks like it's going underneath the foot and to the center inwards, so that's all one cohesive mass. And that foot ring that I've carved in appears like it's been added later. So just tidying up the walls, and again just burnishing some pieces here with that smaller wooden tool, ensuring that the join between the wall of the bowl and the foot is really sharp and clean. And I'll do this a couple of times until I'm happy, particularly ensuring that the foot is nice and smooth. So here's the final piece. What do you guys think? I've just now going to wipe the inside of the bowl, make sure that rim is nice and clean. And then I've also noticed here that there's a slight blob of clay on the edge there that you can see in the lower left half of the screen. So I'm just going to come in with a tool and scrape that off. Hope you liked. Don't forget to like and subscribe.